Do you bake sourdough? Cooking clean while your husband works? Yearn for a simpler time? You might be a trad wife. A rejection of modern feminism has propped up a wave of social media influencers promoting their version of femininity. While this has brought about the wrath of both feminists and trads, we share a Catholic perspective on the latest social media craze. Also, are we finally on the path to impeachment over President Biden's shady business dealings? And does this timing feel a bit too convenient? And can you guess what is so controversial about this picture posted by the USCCB? Hint, it's not about NFP. All this and more on this week's edition of the LOOPcast. God bless everyone. Welcome back to the LOOPcast, where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Today, we are reunited with Erica. It is Erica, Josh, and Tom. Erica, I hope you enjoyed your break.
I did. Thank you.
We have quite a show lined up for you. I'm going to say it. I'm just going to say it. Trad wives. It's a loaded phrase. People have a lot of feelings about it. And it's kind of become a social media phenomenon at this point. It's not a new phenomenon per se, but it's kind of gotten rejuvenated by the likes of TikTok and social media influencers. And I think that... Sorry.
What do you think, Tom? What do you think about trad wives?
Trad wives. Trad wives is a loaded phrase because trad is often associated with Catholicism, and Catholicism has a family, very public family structure that models, hopefully, the Holy Family of Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. And so as feminism has kind of created a lot of miserable people, women and men, there's an interesting secular trend going on now of this, like, we need to offer something different. And I think people have kind of almost made the traditional wife role into a cartoon or a caricature, because that's kind of how everything goes on social media. It gets taken to the extreme and it almost gets put on like a costume. So it offends some people. It entices some people. There's a lot of thoughts and feelings. Erica, I mean, it would be disrespectful to not start with the mother and talented writer we have here. Erica, you are representing. Representation matters. What do you think about the trad wife trend we're seeing on social media?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing. It's definitely a lightning rod, which you alluded to. It draws adulation. I mean, these women, primarily on social media, and there's a few big names. We're going to talk mostly about a woman named S.D. Williams, who's kind of the lead in the trend. And yeah, they stoke a lot of controversy because both from more traditional, Catholic and Christian families, because women in those circles tend to feel like these are caricatures of something good and beautiful that they're trying to achieve. And then obviously in the feminist world, it's like, oh, they're holding up the patriarchy that we've been trying to smash forever. And so I think, there's a lot of good questions. I did go and listen to S.D. Williams. She did an interview this month with Michael Knowles over at Daily Wire. And I wanted to let her, speak for herself with this, sympathetic listener. And she had a couple of quotes. She said, he asked her, what's your goal? What's your goal in promoting your decision to sort of equate domesticity with femininity, to say things like, I submit to my husband, I stay at home, I trust my husband to provide for me, I'm going to care for my children myself. And she said, this is a quote from her, I want to embrace a natural role as a woman and be a mother and wife. You don't need a career to be a woman, which, yeah, obviously, I agree with the statement. She said, I want to go back to roots and slow down and allow women to have joy in taking care of their family. And I think that the key there is allow, because at this point in the secular world and in a lot of Christian circles even, it's this thing of, women, in order to show our worth, we have to become producers in society. We have to have a career that is fulfilling. And I see this a lot in my generation and in the younger generation coming up, that you prioritize career and self-identity. You see yourself in terms of your work, and then come husband, children, home. It's sort of like, well, yeah, I want to have a family. I want to raise children, but only after I have established my job, my career. Only after we have the house. Only after we have the 2 dogs or the cats or whatever. And what she was saying is, as a college student, she decided, she met the man she wanted to marry, and so she gave up all the career and she prioritized her family. Now, you also alluded to this is not a new phenomenon. Like, this has been going on a long time. So let me just share with you in my 20 years of marriage the history of the mommy influencer. Go ahead.
Erica, if I could,
yeah.
we need, because
Slow
I
me
think
down.
sorry, this is
Are
going to
you
be.
telling me to shut up and get back in the kitchen? I think that's what I'm hearing.
Oh no, this is going to be a tough episode. This is going to be a tough episode. I think it's important to maybe offer a different side of what St. Williams specifically is doing, because all the quotes you said were actual quotes from her interview.
Yeah.
But I think if someone were to just look her up on TikTok right now and watch some of her stuff, they might be rubbed a little bit the wrong way. And just so I can offer, what's going on both sides here. So she spends a lot of time clearly, preparing herself physically to get in front of a camera, and it almost feels like commercialize the tradition.
Oh, she looks like Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
She's very made up.
And the irony of it, she's 25, she doesn't have kids, and she clearly spends a ton of time in front of a camera. There's no way she doesn't make money off of this. And she has a lot of fame and influence off of, basically putting what she thinks a traditional wife's role in front of a camera to thousands upon thousands of people. So, like, that to me doesn't really seem traditional.
It isn't, and it's true that like some of the clothes she wears is even a little too tight fitting, and it's like, what are you kind of actually doing this about?
It's hypersexualized. Yeah. It's very sexualized.
So in one sense, it's like, so some of the critics are like, well, this isn't real. It's like, well, wait a minute, somebody's using social media to sell a fantasy. Like, that's never happened before. But
right.
It is interesting to start thinking about, like, why is what she's saying resonating with a lot of men and women? Like, a lot of men are like, gosh, that's not just the physical part, but that she's actually interested in raising a family and not so obsessed with a career, and, says nice things about men, and, wants to be there for her husband and that kind of stuff. Because I feel like, feminism had some things to contribute to society, but it brought a lot of negatives. And one of the negatives was just in general a disdain for masculinity. And I think, just that she's saying, I like my husband and I want to treat him with respect. It's like, you know what? If you do that, like, the best way to get a husband to do anything is not to berate him and scold him, which feminism has taught women to do. Like, yeah, you should scold your husband like he's a child. And that's what's been the history over the last 30 years. You look at popular culture, and that's how, women are yelling at their husbands and stuff like that. But a wife who's like, oh, you're the best. Hey, would you be willing to do this for me, and ask so nicely? Like, the guy will run through a brick wall. I mean, it's like, I was just find it so hilarious that the critique of this is that it's just, oh, well, that's not that realistic. And look, I mean, the thing is, why is it that, as Erica said, having a career and getting a job and doing all that other kind of stuff is the primary focus now for women as well? It's like, that's traditionally what men would do. Men would go out and provide and for the family. And it's not that women can't ever have a job or do anything. I mean, it's such, like, a lot of times with social media, we get in these hard dichotomies, but it's true. It's not just that this recent thing with the trad wife thing. I mean, I know a lot of women who decide to, stay at home and raise a family. My wife, obviously. And, people just, they kind of, like, how dare you? Like, why are you doing that? It's like, wait a minute. Feminism was supposedly about choices, and you could choose whatever you wanted to choose. But apparently, if you choose to raise a family,
yeah, right.
Except
that's when it's like you open the door and all these demons start screaming. Like, what is the deal?
And I want to get back. And Erica, I actually really want to, like, set this up for you correctly, because you have so much knowledge and personal experience on this exact subject. You've raised a beautiful family. This might make some trad Catholics think you're like, you've worked, like, you work for CatholicVote right now. We're with you every Thursday. So I think question for you then, so the words trad wives and seeing this kind of caricature on social media and a lot of these things suggested, do you feel, how does that phrase make you feel living the way that you're living now and being Catholic? Because I think it kind of, some people will get rubbed the wrong way, I think, by that suggestion.
Yeah, and I'm going to drop the word diversity here. I think little buzzword. We all get a little itchy under the neck there. But I think that, when I hear the word trad wife, whenever you see these social media trends, like Josh says, we tend to get into these sort of hard and fast categories and identities that don't reflect either the only way to be a woman or the only way to have a family and raise a household and make your priorities straight. What I think, and I wanted to present Esty Williams, yes, I think it's very plastic, and it's almost a Barbie kind of thing in a traditional values Barbie. I don't know if there is such a thing, but it's a little, I don't like watching the videos for that reason. But I think there's a truth there that Josh said. Why is it compelling? What's the attraction? Because the truth that's there is that the fulfillment of a human life happens in the gift of self. And she's trying in her secular way, in her sort of therapeutic, design your own identity way, to get at that I'm going to give my life over to my family first, to the human beings in my life first. The other things follow. Now, it's hard to swallow that pill when you're watching these influencers because they're making probably hundreds of thousands of dollars off of these accounts. So you're like, is that really the priority? Is it? And I think, Rachel Kalaki, who's been on our Edify videos, she's a great just thinker in terms of what does it mean to be a woman in the Catholic Church.
Fellow Ave alum as well.
Yeah,
shout out.
Ave University.
I went to college with her. Yeah.
Okay, Rachel. So I'm gonna put her article into the show notes. But she talks about choosing the people that you follow in order to become the kind of woman or man you want to be. And she talks about this concept that influencer culture, where these influencers tend to be very young. We mentioned Esty Williams and all these other moms. They're in their early to mid 20s. They have
Esty Williams isn't a mom, by the way.
And she's not even a mom.
Well, she just got married earlier this year, so just
right. Give her some time, right? But
well, I mean, she's upfront about the fact that she's changed her life around and that she had a life that was a little bit different. So I don't want to totally barbecue her for this stuff. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. But again, like the idea that we find these influencers online who are young, beautiful. It's a curated presentation of what their life is like. It's not actual real life. Instead, Rachel Klake's talking about we should be, as women in the Catholic Church, we should be forming relationships with older women who have lived the life, whose kids have turned out the way that you want your kids to grow up into. And I know for me, as a young Catholic mom, I was in graduate school for philosophy. I was going the PhD route, and I started having children. And I meet these women who had already, 8 to 10 kids. They're homeschooling their kids. Not that that's like the only way to do it, but they had lived a full marriage. They had seen the full gamut of motherhood, and they became for me my models. And it was about forming relationships with them and watching them parent, sort of an apprentice, journeyman, master relationship that Rachel Klake talks about in her article. That's a much healthier way of becoming the person and finding the fulfilling life that you want. And it's going to look so different because I knew women who had worked while raising 8 kids. I knew women who had never worked outside the home raising 8 kids. And they're all devout Catholics. They love our Lord. Some of them go to the TLM. Some go to a Reverend Novus Ordo. Others are even, converts to the faith who are still figuring all that out. And it's a much healthier way for young women than to jump on social media, find your tribe, and live on the internet like it's a real place.
Well, and I also just want to say, so that these, social media accounts aren't really a realistic portrayal, and that's fine. It should be a jumping off point to have this discussion about how we got into this mess, and how we're going to get out of it. I've always said men and women got us into this mess, and men and women are going to get us out of this mess. And just so the social media accounts and all these things are not a realistic portrayal, which is, of course, true. It's also the case that the biggest transformation we had on the family dynamic was in the 70s. That's when more and more, families were shifting away from this, and women were entering the workforce. And I think part of the reason that was done, it was also not realistic. All these moms would end up watching like Phil Donahue, and he would have all these radicals on his show and would just convince women that they are being enslaved and this is horrible. And they'd take a horrible case and then the wife and the husband just leaves you for his secretary and you're left with 5 kids. And it's like, okay, that is also not a realistic portrayal of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what happened is like overnight transformation, and all of a sudden all the women enter the workforce. And I would like to say part of the reason why is like, hey, big corporations love women working out of the home. They don't want women, like I always like to explain this way, like if you're a big corporation, what can we do to lower wages? I don't know, double the workforce. And that's what they did in the 70s. I mean,
exactly.
And
right.
Do I have a problem with women working? Of course I don't. My wife was a nurse. She worked for many years as a nurse, and then we started raising a family. She took time off, and then she went back to work for a little bit. Now she's helping to run a Catholic bookstore part-time. I mean, all these things, like just like you, Erica, like now that the kids are older, you're in a position where you can go back to writing and editing and podcasting, and that's fine. There's no idea. The idea, though, is for women, it's like, well, you're saying then women should put, the family first. And I'm saying even men should put the family first. Okay. It's never putting work first.
Correct. Yeah.
The work that I do is in service to my family. It's got to be understood that the husband and the wife are a couple. They are one. And they're like, how are we together building this family? How are we working together to make sure this works? That's the way it always has to be.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it picks up on the sort of the alternative to, just to bring up a pop culture reference here, Barbie movie. Like, let's bring that up too. Big news, Barbie's like breaking the box office. Not a huge surprise because it's marketed to 8 to 10-year-old girls and their nostalgic mothers. But the solution presented in the Barbie movie and by, the directors, producers, writers of that, the Hollywood solution to this is to divide men and women and to say, okay, men have so messed up, they need to just go live in their little patriarchal fantasy. Women are completely victimized, so they're just going to go create their own Kate McKinnon, like Ugly Barbie or whatever she's called. And so the only way to fix this problem is to separate. So in a way, it's not very woke because it's saying, oh, there is a binary and they just have to live in separate worlds. But that is not the Judeo-Christian approach to the sexes, that God created them male and female. And like you said, Josh, it's by the two working together that we're going to get out of this mess that was feminism. I have to plug this book. So Carrie Gress, one of the founders of Theology of Home, great website. I think a beautiful vision of femininity that's not like women equal gingham dresses and making, cakes for their husbands who are peckish at work. I just couldn't stand that. That was one of the TikToks I watched. He was feeling peckish and I made him a cake. And it's like... But anyway, I digress. So Carrie Gress, her book comes out August 15th. Please go pre-order it. It's called The End of Woman. And she walks us through this history of feminism. And Josh, to your point about how capitalist, big corporations, they love women in the workforce. They love the idea that women can just abort their babies and get right back to work. I mean, we saw this with Amazon offering to fly their workers to go get abortions so that they could get right back on the assembly line. And if you're thinking that like working in an Amazon packing house is a career and somehow is women's liberation, I mean, that's pretty pathetic.
Well,
anyway,
there's nothing wrong with hard work, but I know what you're saying.
No, hard work is fine. It's not.
That's what's hard about this conversation is because you say one thing and it's just going to make one group mad. And like, it is a sensitive subject, but like a corporation is not going to love you the same way a husband would love you. I think is just the bottom line, right? Like, even if you have the best job ever, you need to understand it as a job, because as soon as you're inconvenient or the company's going through hard times, they will fire you. And like, that's just the reality. Like,
it's just like Marxism, right? It's Marxism that it reduces every human citizen to a cog in the wheel, to a worker and a producer. There's no difference between men and women. There's no like, oh, you're a parent, that's different. Like, you have other responsibilities that are primary.
I'm going to tie this to the direct election of senators. How about that for a crazy connection?
I'm excited.
There's a lot of conservatives who
do it,
who say, hey, man, that's where everything in this country started to really go downhill. And it's like, wait, what? And I'm one of them, by the way. The idea is, I know this sounds crazy, okay?
Wow, very fascist.
Okay, so here's the thing. We had, you've got the House of Representatives, you got the Senate. And the Senate used to be elected by the states. And the whole idea behind that was the house is directdirectly accountable to the people at a temporary moment, and then we be kind of crazy, and they might be a little hot. And the Senate is going to make sure that it is focused on the states. Why? So that the power of the federal government doesn't get too big. Okay, and we removed that 100 years ago, and it's been horrible. Okay, so man and wife in a relationship, husband is supposed to be focused on what? The external and career and that kind of stuff, and the woman on the domestic. Now, it's not that she can't work outside the home and do things like that too, but she's going to be like worried about the house and the home and making sure that's going well, and the man's out there to try to get the resources that the family needs to move forward. And so it's like but if you switch it so that they're both working on the external, then who's focused on the internal? Who's focused on the domestic church? Who's focused on the family? Obviously, both the father and mother need to be focused on the children. I'm not saying that dads forget about it, but it's like once you switch that alignment and get women focused on a full-time career, then it's like, then they feel like, oh, and that was been the big discussion for the last 30 years is like, can you have it all? Can women do it all? Can they have a full-time career and try to raise a family? And there are women who are incredibly talented and they can do a lot of this stuff like this, but it is a lot harder, and it's like you do make sacrifices and you do have these trade-offs, and we need to talk about it like this. There are trade-offs. Yeah. And I just feel like, we as a society, there was the whole mommy wars in the 80s and it would just get ugly. And it's like, because people would be judgmental. I get that, but it's like, are we better off?
If I could frame this too, and like so I had a long discussion with my wife about this. Who,
she
if
makes
anyone
sourdough.
wants to know, yeah, she makes sourdough. But I also work for her on the weekends. She has her own business, so she's quite the enigma when it comes to the trad wife conversation. But I think the best way that we kind of came, because we often talk about in our marriage, what are our priorities? What should our priorities be? And are we aligned with those priorities? And I think the easiest way to frame it as a Catholic is I want you to get to heaven and I want our kids to get to heaven. And that's just like an easy way, I think, for everyone to understand it. Like, we got into marriage because this is going to be a sanctifying experience for us to help each other get to heaven and lead our children to heaven. And I think, unfortunately, people kind of treat either like economic systems or jobs or whatever as a religion. And Tucker actually has a great clip on this, but basically he's like, capitalism is the best system that we've ever thought of as humans, but it's not a religion. Mm-hmm. And we are not at service of the market. The market should be at service to us. And so there's people that, found it empowering to be able to double their income by both working two jobs, but now they pay someone else to raise their children.
Right.
Exactly. It's just a reality of what's happening.
And there's more, and the families have more income. And so then they're like, okay, right, let's go to,
so you can buy more toys.
Let's go to Disneyland, right, or Disney World every year, and let's buy bigger houses. And so like families who decide that they don't want two people in the workforce are having to compete economically with, families that have double income. And so it becomes that much harder to raise a traditional family.
Well, and you get used to living a certain way, and it's hard when you get used to living that way. And so basically, but if I could just like round this all out, we are not at service to the market's at service to us. And if our priority our sacred obligation as parents is to educate your child, it's actually not just kind of a throwaway. It's actually in the catechism. You are responsible for the education, upbringing, and faith of your child. And I think Catholics really feel that seriously. And if you feel that seriously and that's a priority to you, you need to organize the work, ethereal work around your priorities, right? Getting to heaven, raising your children, getting them to heaven. In most scenarios, it is not best for your children to burn both parents out and then have no attention towards that. And I see it I look at it and I'm not like, wow, judgmental, like these people are doing it wrong. I almost feel sorry, I think, for really a lot of, and people have kind of lost their priorities. I don't think intentionally or maliciously, but once you get there, it's hard to see clearly and reorganize your life. So the way that my wife and I think about it is like, okay, our current work situation, is it ordered around those priorities? And there's a lot of work. I want to bring this up too, because there's people who are very, very orthodox and extreme that feel like women should never do anything that resembles work. It's not what they believe. And the way that I like to think about that is there's work that needs to be done to run a family to reach those priorities. Some of that work has a dollar amount attached to it, and you get paid for it. There's so much of that work that you will never see a dollar amount for. And that work is just as important, if not more important. I think the most important work is seeing my wife raise my son is more valuable than anything that I could ever get paid to do. Like that is
or pay someone else to do, right?
Or pay someone else to do. And so like I think about reorganizing the work towards the natural strengths of men and women as they complement each other as God designed it to be. So how can we make that work into it? If that means the husband stays home a little bit, great. If that means the husband works all the time, great. If that means the wife has to go out and work and the husband stays home, great. It's all different, like you said, diversity. But like, are we getting to heaven? Is this leading us closer to heaven, leading us further away? And I think that's the missing piece to the trad wife thing, because I see it's a very secular trend, and it doesn't talk about how marriage as a sacred institution in the divine plan is the male complements the female in total gift of self to help them get to heaven. It's a better setup. And depending on your vocation, of course, because some people are led towards becoming priests or lay consecrated virgins, or there's a lot of different options, but these are all designed for us based on our human anthropology to get to heaven. It's what's best for us. So if you see it through that lens, I think it makes a lot more sense and isn't just a weird social media trend or, you know what I mean?
Well, it's not just picking like a flavor of ice cream. Like I feel like vanilla, I feel like chocolate, I feel like trad wife, I feel like, purple hair genie.
Girl boss.
So it's I think, the social media world is always, it's tempting to just be like, I can pick and choose. And like, who do I feel like? It's kind of a piece. It is of a piece with, like I said, therapeutic culture, self-creation and all this. And unless you are tethered to eternity in understanding who you are, that there is a givenness about our destiny and a givenness about who God created us to be, it's going to fall flat.
You were made for something. And that's a huge psychology switch. Instead of the I can become whatever I want. And funny enough, you look at Barbie movie, you look at these secular movies, it's always I can be whoever I want to be, and the only one restraining me is myself and the patriarchy and evil men or evil women, regardless. Like those are all meant to divide us. Satan divides. Like we are best in complement to each other and connected. And so a lot of these things are just seeking to divide us, and it's wrong and evil. Like the best is when we're together. So I
like men.
Yeah. Okay.
They're great.
My wife makes sourdough and it's great. And she also contributes, in her talents
actually,
in different
it's
ways.
funny
So
too,
it's
because
okay.
I feel like in, conservative Catholic circles, there's been enough of appreciation of what Pope John Paul had talked about in the 70s in the 80s about the feminine genius. And he's, it's like, it's so nice that someone said, it's so nice that you're coming up with all these teachings for women. He goes, it's actually also for men, That was his whole point. Like, so men could open their eyes and see, gosh, this feminine genius. And I would like to say this is true, but I think given how it absolutely still needs to be learned and taught and appreciated, but we also need a little bit more of an appreciation for the masculine genius. And it's more than just opening up a pickle jar. Okay. It's understanding that there's a way that men look at things and try to solve problems and, play to their nobility and try to, we want to get men to be selfless, not selfish. We want to get them to be serving, servant leaders. And if you want that, the best way to do it is to try to appeal to, their sense of solidarity and their gift of self and give them a noble thing that they're fighting for. Because there's too many men out there that look at marriage and they're like, why would I want to be a part of this? It's like, first of all, there's it used to be that you could only have sex if you're inside marriage. Well, that's now not a problem. You can get it without marriage.
No longer a motivating
But
factor.
it's also the fact that outside of cases of abuse, of course, if you don't count those cases, like something like 75% of marriages are ended by women. And it's like, so guys are like, why would I do this? And it just feels like it's been ratcheted up so that marriage is like this. I ultimately think marriage is a major blessing, obviously. And I think it benefits women more than men, true. But I think it's so beneficial for both. And I just feel like we need to kind of how dare, husband forget the anniversary, and this is so horrible, he's such an idiot, and we hate men. It's like, maybe we should restore this kind of like, if we want more men to get married, like make it, I don't know, something that they want. Like don't present it to be so miserable.
Well, men,
just my 2 cents.
Men have just been dumped on, but men have been dumped on for so long. Like, it just feels like there's this anger towards men and masculinity, at least me, like, seeing it in popular culture, and it's just become kind of accepted to really rip on men. And like, I think we're both at our best if you appeal to the best things about men and women, and you can call it what it is, and not feel like, oh, by saying that, you know, this man is traditionally masculine and strong and decisive and knows what he wants, those are somehow bad qualities.
Right. It's like it's only females. It's only female athlete. Are only females who decide they want to become a man and they take testosterone. That we celebrate that. That's the only expression of testosterone we seem to like in this society today. A little messed up.
Yeah, so I think those are all good points. We're going to move on now. We have to touch on this. This is not necessarily a fun topic, but I think it's very telling. So we have a potential impeachment coming. So Speaker of the House McCarthy has said the I word, the impeachment word. So we might be seeing some motion in terms of impeaching President Biden over some business dealings with his son, Hunter Biden. And just to do a quick refresher, because there's just I feel like people have just heard all corruption all the time about Hunter Biden. And yes, like, he's clearly lived a very promiscuous is probably the most generous way I could say it, life. So this actually comes down to,
hey, you know, to his credit, it's not easy being a Ukrainian energy expert. So,
and an artist at the same time. I believe he just sold 11 paintings for $900,000 about. So, artist and energy executive. Anyway, so Burisma Holdings Limited is a holding company for a group of energy exploration and production companies. It's based in Ukraine, and it is one of the largest private natural gas producers in Ukraine. So Burisma co-founder and CEO Mykola Zlochevsky claimed that he was coerced by then Vice President Biden and his son into paying millions of dollars for bribes in exchange for their help in pressuring Ukraine Viktor Shokin. In 2015, the head of Burisma, Viktor Shokin, was a confidential source reporting to the FBI. He said the company paid money to the Bidens to have the support of President Biden. Shokin was ultimately fired for his investigation at the request of Hunter with the support of Biden. And so Trump was threatened impeachment because he wanted to investigate these dealings with the Shokin business. And so in 2020, Trump's allies obtained Hunter Biden's laptop, the laptop from hell, as many of you know it. Some of these contents related to these dealings, and then also with CEFC China and Burisma.
I'm going to stop you there. So one important detail that came out from this laptop, and again, like, we could go on and on about Hunter Biden's like corrupt dealings. The important thing that has changed in the last few weeks is that the evidence is now overwhelmingly pointing to the fact that Biden has been lying about his knowledge. President Biden has been lying about his knowledge and involvement in Hunter Biden's dealings with foreign nationals, specifically Ukraine. And of course, everyone will remember that the line has been from the Biden administration, the president has nothing to do with his son's business dealings. And we'll remember the famous line of Biden saying on the debate stage with President Trump, the second debate, not the one where they were like yelling at each other the whole time, but the second debate where he says, I have never received any money from my son's dealings. I have never received any money from foreign sources, unlike the man next to me on the stage. And he points to Trump, who gets all his money from China. And Trump's just standing there like, I'm not responding because the last debate was so bad. But Biden,
it was bad.
The evidence has become overwhelming that, in fact, President Joe Biden was on these phone calls. He was, in fact, getting funds directly from Hunter Biden, and Hunter Biden's funds were coming from these foreign sources. There was an email from 2019, and it's Hunter Biden talking to his own daughter, so the president's granddaughter, and he's just like, I hope you're grateful because you'll never have to pay half of your dad's bills like I have to pay my dad's bills. And it's just like, it literally says, I pay my dad's bills.
Is that the granddaughter that he acknowledges?
No, that's not that one. No.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry, I didn't know about that
this
one.
This is one of the acknowledged grandchildren, the fortunate few.
But isn't it also a little funny that, so the phone call that Trump got impeached over was digging into what we are now seeing as pretty clear bribery and corruption?
Yeah, ironies
two-tier
abound.
justice system. So, this doesn't surprise me. We're going to hear someone testify over this. His name's Devin Archer. He served as the director at Brisma. So going forward, it just seems to me, and I saw a video from 2019 of Biden talking about this actually, and it is it's shocking to see the amount of mental decline that we have witnessed since then. And we've seen some kind of soft hit pieces, I guess, against him. I think there's an article about his temper when dealing with other things. It seems like it's people outlets that were friendly with him before are kind of turning against him a little bit. It seems to me that we're seeing a potential soft replacement for the 2024 election. Maybe that goes to Gavin Newsom. I honestly doubt that goes to Kamala Harris, but are you guys sensing as well, like these investigations could have happened at different times? Why are they happening now?
Well, it is possible they're trying to make way for it. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, mentioning impeachment. I just don't know if that's possible. Here's my concern about that. Like, if there ever came to light this much corruption on a Republican president, like the entire corporate media complex would broadcast it day and night, and eventually enough Republicans to go, yeah, that's kind of bad. We should do something about it. And then things would start to fall apart, and the Republican president would resign or something like that. But my concern with this is, like, half the country, the Democrats, aren't even going to hear about most of this stuff. I mean, like, they never hear about it on their news outlets, and so they have no clue all this corruption's going on. They just think, oh, well, President Trump was trying to coerce, Ukraine over, aid that they were going to get, and he was holding up the money because he wanted them to do something. Oh, okay. And so they never hear the other side of the story. They never hear any of this stuff. I mean, the whole thing about the Hunter laptop, look, the New York Post discovered this laptop, ran the story like 3 or 4 weeks before the election. Facebook, Twitter at the time was not owned by Elon Musk. All these social media outlets would actively prevent people from sharing it, even on direct messaging between friends. Like, hey, check this out. Bloop, they wouldn't allow it. So it's like, how can you have this debate? Like, if the president had done enough crimes that warranted impeachment and removal from office, how would half the country even know about it? Because their media is only telling the total filter. I mean, we joke about here social media and all the filters, Instagram, all this. Yeah, the curated view. That's nothing. That's nothing like compared to the corporate media.
Hold my beer, says
crazy.
CNN.
I love my mother to pieces. All she does is watch the corporate media stuff, right? And it's like we were talking the other day, and she was obsessed with that New York Congressman George Santos. I'm like, this is such a non-story. Like, there's 100 other stories that are more important than this. But you look at CNN and NBC, and they're obsessed with it. Oh my gosh, this congressman, he lied on his resume, he got elected to office. Oh, so he's only like the 80th guy that had done that? I mean, who cares? Like, it's all the corporate media going squirrel, and trying to get everyone else's attention on these non-issues. And so that's my biggest concern with this. It's the same. It reminds me of Benghazi. And so many conservatives
oh wow,
Hillary Clinton should be impeached. This is horrible. This is the worst thing ever. And I'm like, dude, I agree with you. It's egregiously horrible, but like, half the country has no clue on this, and they're so out to lunch, and they're not being told what's happening because we don't have a press that is honest with the American public. And so that's why we've seen alternative media, being built up. We see Daily Wire, Breitbart, Washington Examiner, obviously the Loop, all these different alternatives that we can hopefully start to reach people. And then the left will say, well, you're just in your own ecosystem with Fox and all that kind of stuff. Oh, really? Like, you guys are
think we like Fox?
out of touch. Give
no.
me a break. I mean, it's like, that's what just drives me crazy about all this stuff. So
they live on an island called Manhattan and stay there, except when they fly to LA to like go to movie previews. That's about
okay. Welcome to the media bias section, because this has to be talked about.
Good segue, Pogo.
I do what I can. So New York Times wrote a story about a 19-year-old in Nebraska, and
Horrible
Before
story.
I even bring up the story,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to read the headline. I mean, the New York Times headline you can read, it was completely biased. It was a real tragedy. A girl, I'll read the headline so if you're aware, there's a place I would recommend visiting. It's called National Catholic Reporter.
The Catholic
And
is
they are
silent.
kind of known. Right. The Catholic is silent. They're known for just being a complete liberal hack job. And so here's what was shared by one of their reporters on his Twitter. It's a screenshot of a very specific part. Nebraska teen who used pills to end pregnancy gets 90 days in jail. Celeste Burgess, 19, and her mother, Jessica Burgess, 42, were charged last year after the police obtained their private Facebook messages. Just shared a screenshot, no context.
And that was exactly
between
the
the lines.
headline that the New York Times wanted for their audience.
Right. And so then the reporter then shared a picture of a policeman handcuffing this 19-year-old girl in a courtroom with her crying. No context, zero. Imagine what that's leading you to believe. It's leading you to believe that she was arrested because of a pro-life law in Nebraska about abortion. However, the part that they left out, which I happily added on Twitter, part of the article that said, prosecutors said Burgess, who was 17, took pills to abort her pregnancy at 29 weeks. Later, she set fire to the fetus before leaving it in a field outside of Norfolk. And what they didn't add was that the private Facebook messages were, I need to get this thing outside of me, and we're going to burn the evidence when it comes out. They buried her, dug her up, or buried the baby, dug it up, buried the baby, dug it up, burned it, buried again, dug it up. So what she was charged with was felonious handling of dead remains. Essentially, it's a felony in Nebraska, and so she's going to spend some time in jail.
Right. She wasn't even
But-
charged under the abortion prohibition.
No, she's
Right.
not charged under any abortion law, and it's actually a class 4 felony punished up to 2 years in prison. But when you want to talk about, if you could spin, like, this is serial killer stuff. Like, Netflix makes documentaries on this kind of thing, and a Catholic quote-unquote reporter was happy to frame it in a very selective way to try to take pot shots at pro-life laws that are saving lives in Nebraska, to try to whip up animus against it, because
Shameful.
that's what it did, by the way. There's people in the comments saying, wow, we live in this authority where you can go to jail for an abortion. She burned a child.
Well,
Like, that is
she
a serial
burned
killer thing to
remains.
do.
Just make sure we're clear.
Mhm.
Yes.
Correct, but Josh...
No, I mean, I understand. I just don't want to make sure we're good. Yes. No, the whole point is
Right, okay, thank you for your journalistic integrity, but there was no journalistic integrity going on over at NCR.
the reason why a society says you don't burn the human remains of anyone, whether it's an unborn child or your grandpa, is because we understand that it is immoral and evil action to do that. The human being, a human person, has dignity even after they die. Like and it's something about us. I always say this, like, why is, for example, torture wrong? Like, if the person, like, if someone was to be executed, let's say, and they're going to go be executed, it would not be appropriate for, like, the guard to just, like, humiliate him and like do all sorts of horrible things to him. It's like, oh, well, he's going to die anyway. It's like, no. It is impermissible for you to do something like this because how it affects you. And so, like, for example, like, well, this person's already dead. Therefore, what does it matter? Like, Nebraska wasn't weighing. You're right. Nebraska was not weighing into the abortion debate on this. It was like, we have a policy where we, as humans, do not tolerate burning of human bodies. Like, that's what this is about. And we don't allow for it because it darkens the soul. It's bad for you. It's just, I mean, come on, get over it. And so the whole point is that this so-called Catholic journalist, Brian Fragat, was sharing this completely slanted article headline that was
Selectively,
trying to
right.
make it
Screenshots.
seem like these big, bad Midwestern red states are against girls who just want to, have their
They're just scared
reproductive
and alone.
freedom, blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. Absolutely despicable and shameful. I can't believe it.
Well, it doesn't stop there, Josh. So the next social media firestorm that we encountered over the weekend was actually a tweet shared by the USCCB, not typically known to be the center of a lot of controversy, and yet there was a controversial post. And I'm going to put it up for the YouTube listeners because let's play a game. Here's the picture. All right, I'm going to describe it for the audio listeners. It is of a beautiful wedding mass during the moment of consecration. And so we have the bride and groom kneeling in front of the altar, and the priest is holding up a host. And for those who have figured it out, congratulations. The priest is facing Ad Orentiem, meaning towards the tabernacle as opposed to towards the people. And it was a post about, that wasn't even the point of the post.
Yeah.
The post is about celebrating National Natural Family Planning Awareness Week, NFP, which you would think would be the controversy.
And usually it is.
Usually it is.
Every year.
That's a hot button on its own.
But
right.
no, the controversy was actually about how the priest was, quote unquote, facing the wrong way. And it made people very, very angry. Proud alumni of Fordham University, teacher of philosophy, said, "This post and picture obviously is an FU to Pope Francis. Shame on the sorry lot of you, Crypt Keeper MAGA bishops, for your disobedience and disrespect to the Holy Father." He tagged Pope Francis, which was nice of him, so you can let him know. We had some more innocuous comments, old picture, I hope. Maybe you should check your stock photos for something up to date.
It was 5 weeks ago.
This one was a good one.
This wedding was 5 weeks ago.
Right, this poor girl, she was kind of a part of it. She's like, yeah, that was my wedding picture. Like, and people are like, oh, sorry, you had to be a part of this. So here's a good one. Mass Ad Orentiem, proselytized by far right. It tagged Mill Arch USA, anti-Pope Broglio.
Yeah.
Contrary to at Pontifex motu proprio traditiones custodes, Broglio's new Rome in D.C. will construct third St. Peter's Basilica next to Pentagon.
Oh my gosh. My brain broke when you were reading that. I just can't even follow.
What a
No, I love the first
yeah.
wave. The first wave of comments, though, like right when it posted, the first wave were a bunch of, more leftist Catholics, like outreach buds. They start posting it there being like, why is this a TLM mass? Why are you showing the old right? Why are we and it's so clearly a Novus Ordo. I'm like, you're just displaying your liturgical illiteracy here, because like it's clearly a Novus Ordo. There are concelebrants. He's not at the high altar. It's so obvious, but just like the ignorance. And then as they realize their mistake, the tone turns to this, like, you're promoting, like, bad things.
Some people got the NFP. So, okay, before we get into implications, I got to get some of the good comments out of the hopper here.
All right.
So someone commented, wow, I bet the priest didn't even open mass with a few jokes or play jazz guitar during the entire mass. What is this, 300s AD? My favorite one, I think, was the photo used here leads me to believe the USCCB knows who actually uses NFP.
Oh.
Yeah.
They know their audience. Well played, USCCB.
And then final one was, don't worry, guys. They still sang Table of Plenty for the Eucharistic hymn.
Here's the funny thing about this. Ultimately, I mean, it's probably a staff member. It wasn't like a bishop personally selected this photo anyway. And that staff member might have actually been a priest. Who knows? I mean, and they probably looked at this photo and go, this looks like a very nice reverential photo. Let's use this photo. And they didn't even like think twice, like, oh no, it's Ad Orentiem or ad populum. Like, no, they just like, this is a beautiful picture. Let's use it.
Right.
And like, and if you
marriage.
came up to a bishop and said, hey, this post drew a lot of attention on social media, and the bishop would look at it and go, okay, yeah. Oh, because people like the photo. It looks pretty, or what? Like, oh, no, it's Ad Orentiem, and they got all mad. And they go, why would they be mad? Like this idea that all the bishops are like hardcore MAGA right-wingers is laughable at its face. But
it's so,
but to them,
we talk about this all
like
the time. That's ridiculous.
The hard lefties are like so angry about like this liturgical, how dare it be Ad Orentiem? Like it's a hot button to you. Everyone else is not like freaking out about this. It's like you ask most bishops,
right.
They're like, oh, that looks nice. Okay. Oh, what's the big deal? Why is everyone upset? Oh, well, because it's Ad Orentiem. Well, we have photos that aren't that way too. It's like we're not like, they're not draconian.
I'm glad they kept it
it's
up
like,
because, but like it truly continues to shock me why there's so much animus. Like this just is such a hot button for certain people who hate anything Orthodox adjacent, right? Because that's what this is associated with, is Orthodox Catholicism. That's how it was done before Vatican II, and there's nothing in Vatican II that suggests that Ad Orentiem is wrong or should be changed.
The only people get mad at this.
There's new interpretations.
The only people get mad at this is think that the Catholic Church started with Vatican II, and that everything else before it was done was over.
Yeah, it's what C.S. Lewis called the chronological snobbery, that anything that is before the 70s or anything that's after the 90s, maybe it has to be from the 70s or 80s for it to be legit and accepted. 70s, 80s in the Synod.
I mean, the 70s is
like
one of the worst decades ever, and it's like you're stuck in it. Like, get over
thank
it.
you. Someone said
Why
it.
do we want to stay
Someone
there?
said it.
Come on. The point is the 70s gave us instant coffee. Like, get over it, people. Like, this is terrible. And felt banners at Mass.
And gas
it's
lines.
horrible. I mean, like, do we have to have a church that's music is stuck in James Taylor 70s garbage forever? Like, why is that the one tradition we hold on to? Oh, let's make sure our music is crap.
Yeah, this is our historical tradition, liturgical tradition as Catholics. Why can't we at least look at it with some like reverence or appreciation? It's like, it's odd to see true anger over it. There's a lot of true anger over this post. And it's like, usually people are angry about NFP, which is like a beautiful sacrifice and a way to become closer with your wife and work with God's plan for marriage and having children. But instead, it was about a priest facing the wrong way.
The reason why they're so mad is they're worried that Catholicism might break out.
All right. Yeah, I think that does it. There's also some, I don't even know if we really need to get into this, but there's more swipes at CatholicVote over some things we're working on at the border with Catholic Charities. There was a buoy put up by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and those buoys are getting Catholics to call for him to be refused the Eucharist, which is an interesting take because they had a different take when Nancy Pelosi was refused the Eucharist. So now we're, I guess, going to try to weaponize that. But the argument, Texas is trying basically what they can to keep the border somewhat secure and orderly. And the Biden administration actually saw that and are suing Texas over putting that up, saying that they can't put that border there because they can't apparently have a semblance of a normal border. And Catholic lefties are saying that anyone that's in favor of this structure is, or actually a sound border for that matter, is anti-Catholic, should not receive the Eucharist, isn't pro-life. The list goes on, although we've seen conflicting reports saying that child trafficking, human trafficking is at all-time highs at the border. We're losing track of children that come into the country, which doesn't seem very pro-life to me. If anything, it seems like the best solution would be for the federal government to institute somewhat of a coherent and sound border policy to humanely, allow people to come into the country under the right circumstances. But a free-for-all seems like a better option for certain people, and I just think it's incomprehensible and evil. But yeah, just really unfortunate situation going on at the border, and we're getting swipes for that. And then, there's a guy on Twitter, I'm not even going to name him because he makes me so annoyed, but everything is climate change. And if you're not willing to accept that, you can't become Catholic. The tweet he put out was, if you want to convert to Catholicism, great, but you need to accept Catholic social teaching in its entirety. You can't bring your far-right ideology with you. So that's where we were at. Twitter over the last couple of days. It's Wild West out there, guys.
I like one of our interns termed it bitter Twitter. We've got bitter Twitter showing up in Catholic Twitter land.
Yeah, I always hate to even give them attention because they're like usually only have like a couple thousand followers, and like the only people that really care about them are other liberals on Twitter. I don't think it really gets too far out of there.
Yeah, and just remember, we go on Twitter so you don't have to. So this is not a call for all of you to get on Twitter.
I'm not calling you on Twitter.
Twitter warriors. We're just letting you know that this is out there.
What we do
welcome.
for CatholicVote.
Right. Sacrifices we make for you guys.
It's all about self-sacrifice, the gift of self.
Yes, the gift of self.
Yeah.
So Josh, Twilight Zone, you're up first.
Well, I mean, people who read the Loop saw this, of course, but Senator Bob Casey, he drives me absolutely up the wall. His father was a real strong pro-life governor of Pennsylvania, 2 terms. He was denied, his father was denied an opportunity to speak at the 1992 Democratic National Convention. It's like, wait a minute, like humongous governor from a big state, Pennsylvania, why wasn't he able to speak? Because he was pro-life. Like one of the court cases that we thought was going to overturn Roe, which was Casey versus Planned Parenthood. He was the pro-life governor. That's Casey, him. But his son has the same name, but is not the same man. Let me tell you, he's horrible. And for the first 15, 20 years, Senator Bob Casey Jr. tried to pretend he was pro-life. He would use the moniker. And we're like, this whole time, CatholicVote's like, he's not pro-life. He's full of baloney. He's horrible. He votes for bad things. And he'd vote like one pro-life thing every once in a while. Like, see, look, I'm not so bad. And he'd do that to fool Catholic voters. We're like, stop believing this guy. He's horrible, okay? And so then finally, eventually he's just dropped the whole routine, and he's like, he supports every abortion bill that comes before the Senate now, and he's absolutely horrible. Well, in addition to this, now he's calling for taxpayer funding of a rainbow organization that's promoting youth drag shows. So he wants taxpayers to pay money to this Philadelphia organization that has hosted youth drag shows on $1 million to give it to this organization. So it's like, it just drives me up the wall, like total debauchery, like drag shows. Like you can't, like I always say this, like try to imagine the opposite, but not that it's the true opposite, but like would any senator say, we really need to have, a bunch of youth see strippers and let's have taxpayers pay $1 million. Like, why is it wrong? Like people would never think of that, but it's suddenly if it's gay, it's okay. Like, wait, what? It would be, if anything, it would be worse, but
if it's gay,
that is
it's
quite
okay.
the tagline. If it's okay,
Yeah.
if it's gay,
I mean,
it's okay.
so again, it's just
too much truth to that, unfortunately.
So this is his way to try to appeal to his voters and say, don't worry, I'm not this pro-life Catholic guy anymore, and
Yep.
I mean, he's been in a sense been wearing drag, pretending he's pro-life for all this time.
Ooh. Deep
Shots
cut.
fired. So I thought it'd be kind of fun. It's kind of hot in the streets to do reactions these days, and I have something for us to react to. So strap in your seatbelts.
Richie Greenberg walked into a San Francisco Walgreens when he saw in the frozen food section this.
Chains, heavy chains that went from padlock to padlock on both sides of the doors, and this was bizarre, something I'd never seen before. This is just more icing on the cake, telling us that rampant crime has become a regular part of life.
So typical that in the 30 minutes we were at this Walgreens, we watched 3 people, including this man, steal.
Did that guy pay?
Oh, my
Did that guy
gosh.
pay?
They're just like, no, he didn't.
CNN was trying to
pay. Oh,
say
my
that
goodness.
shoplifting was not a big deal, and it's just Republicans make.
Yeah.
So a headline as early as January of 2023, stores say shoplifting is a national crisis. The numbers don't back it up. And then to confirm that, they sent a CNN crew down to San Francisco and literally witnessed 3 shopliftings in a half hour that they was.
Oh my goodness. That's precious.
Like that, that's like a Key and Peele sketch. Like
But
that's like a
that's what
comedy
I'm
sketch.
saying,
It's
though,
like
but,
some
like,
things are just funnier than.
Remember the
comedy.
riots, like in Minneapolis, and it's like literally, it's just a little bit of a peaceful
Burning
protest,
cars.
and literally there's flames
Yeah.
behind them. You're like, just a little protest.
Turn around and report what you're seeing. Like keep it to
Look.
that. Just describe what you're seeing.
Josh, I know you're an ice cream guy. If you had to go to your store in rural Michigan and you had to get an attendant to unlock a padlock, what would that be signaling to you?
Yeah. Well, let me just say,
Get the hell out of Dodge.
try that in a small town.
Oh.
Yeah. I think the padlocks and the plexiglass, they were saying like there's plexiglass over ketchup. Like, how do we live in a functioning society if you have to get behind plexiglass to get ketchup? Like, that should be. I know that later in this interview, they're interviewing some people in the community. They're like, yeah, we recalled the DA because this is unbelievable. And like, it's not fully fixed, but something needs to be done about this. It's like, yeah.
But you're right, though. Like, I live in the rural areas. I don't have to really worry about this. What do I care? What, quote unquote. It's like, well, actually, I sympathize for the people who live in these communities because they're the victims. Like, you have these
Right.
thugs that are just walking the streets and steal. If you can go into a Walgreens in broad daylight and just steal whatever you want to steal, what does that do to your society? Like you're like, well, wait a minute. If I can do that crime without getting punished, maybe I can do something else. And they'll just start punching people in broad daylight, and they'll just take whatever they want. They'll steal cars next. Like, it breaks down society, and you just throw things at windows. Like, absolute chaos.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because I've seen the progression of this where shoplifting has happened, it's not prosecuted, and then the next iteration is, well, I'm not prosecuted for shoplifting. And then these stores have to make business decisions. And they're like, well, we need to leave San Francisco. We can't have a Walgreens in San Francisco. And then they leave. And then what is the blame for this? Oh, it's racism. And there's food deserts now because in these minority areas, there's no stores, there's no fresh food, anything like that. And it's like,
or pharmacies.
It's not even like, it's not racism. It's the problem of these people who are in charge to run society.
Of course.
You can't keep a civil enough society to have food available for people. It's like,
trust me, these evil corporations want to profit from selling food to everyone. And so if they're not selling in certain neighborhoods, well, maybe that's because you're stealing from them.
Indicative of a problem.
Yeah, hello.
Right?
yeah, you need to, there's a problem. All right. That's all I got.
All
Erica.
right, I'm going to bring it full circle. Now we're going to go back to the anti-trad wife. So we're going to go the face of feminism, Hillary Clinton. She made some news this week, and she was responding to a tweet from her friends at the think tank Center for American Progress, which I like to call Center for American Regress. They tweeted out, quote, MAGA Republicans are pouring fuel on the climate crisis fire. I hope you appreciated the poetical allusions there. So she retweeted this statement and she said,
Highbrow.
quote, hot enough for you? Thank a MAGA Republican, or better yet, vote them out of office, end quote. And I loved my favorite response to this. So basically, it's MAGA Republicans' fault that the world's getting hot and, we're having these heat waves in Dallas. It's over 100 degrees.
In July.
In July. Not to
Imagine that.
mention that it's like 60 degrees on the West Coast up north in the Washington, Oregon. But basically, what she's saying is, if you vote for Democrats, the weather will improve. And I just loved the quotes, the responses to the
I saw
tweet.
a really good one.
Yeah, that was...
I saw a really good one. It was like me exercising my godlike power to control the weather because I voted for Trump.
That's right. I remember back in the day when we used to make jokes about George W. Bush is responsible for global warming. Now it's called climate change. So it's the same tune. It's like, it's all their
They had
fault.
a rebrand.
Yeah. Yeah, this was Seth Dillon at Babylon Bee. If you elect Democrats, the weather will improve. And it's pretty awesome.
And if I could really bring us full circle, you want to talk about someone who is young and achieves social media fame that has basically nothing to contribute to any intellectual conversation?
Saint Greta.
Greta Thunberg.
Saint Greta.
Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Seriously, what does she know about? Come on. Let's be honest. What does she know?
Someone made the point that she was actually born on the exact same day as Kyle Rittenhouse, who answered the call to go to Kenosha to defend that town after the riots and happened to just accidentally, kill, not accidentally, two people tried to kill him and he defended himself. But both Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse were born on the exact same day and year. And someone's like, imagine a rom-com.
Wow.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. I have a movie. I have a proposal. That's
Here we
amazing.
go.
Gosh, don't
Yeah.
let that out of the...
Yeah.
Come on, you got to save that one. We got to make pitches. Okay, I think we rounded out there. Thank you for tuning into this edition. Things that help the program, reviews help us a ton. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, send us an email, loopcast@catholicvote.org. The best thing you can do is share us with a friend. If you like what we got going on here, share us around. We appreciate you all so much, and we'll sign off with St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, and Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us, pray for all the listeners, and we will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.